week at noon Eastern on Thursday, we do this thing called Gain. We started this 12 weeks ago, I think, where we just talk about the top news of the week. We do a little bit more, a little bit of commentary on it that might go beyond the articles. And so normally what you would do is you'd either go to YouTube or VoiceBot's YouTube channel. Everyone should sign up for that, by the way. We've got some amazing stuff there and more coming out every month. We've done like 150 videos since last June, I think. So really a lot of educational content there. All of these sessions, by the way, will eventually make it into that channel. So you'll be able to check those out. But if you're here, you're going to actually get an email with a link to it. So you don't even have to worry about that, but go to the VoiceBot channel because we've got amazing stuff in there. It's also on LinkedIn. So if you follow Eric or I on LinkedIn, you'll see, each week at noon, you can join there and we have like good conversations. What we try to do is talk about the news. If you guys have comments, things you want to say about this, questions you want to have answered, just throw them in the chat here. We'll try to respond to those as best we can. But let's start off for Gain, Generative AI News Rundown for the week. And this is going to be ending April 20th, April 21st time frame. And I have with me my colleague, Eric Schwartz from VoiceBot.ai. Hey, Eric.
Hey, yeah, very excited to be doing this after such a great collection of demos and exciting projects.
Yeah, and if anyone's watching Gain afterwards, just let you know that we just finished up Model Mania. That's AI at Model Mania. And we showed a bunch of demos. And we had 5 different companies show demos. We had some fireside chats. We had the head of robotic process automation from Prudential Financial. It's been really fun. Those are all going to be separate videos that are going to be able to be out there for educational purposes. But let's talk about the news. That's what we do here. And the first thing I want to talk about is I want to talk about StableLM and Stability AI XL, or Stable AI XL. I can't remember, but I want to talk about Stability AI and the Stable Diffusion ecosystem. Eric, what's going on there?
Yes, so as you hinted at, there's a couple of big things. There's the big news today, which is that Stability AI put out an open source language model called StableLM. It's still in alpha form. It's on GitHub. But it's Stability AI moving from its more visual focus into the language area and essentially setting up a more direct competition with OpenAI, with Google, and really taking a big step forward in expanding its place in generative AI in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that's really, really fascinating. And there's something about that large language model as well that might not be obvious to people, but when you read the Synthetia and VoiceBot articles, it probably will be. But right now, one of the things they talk about is a smaller model. I think they've got like 7 billion parameters, 14 and 65 or something like that. And they even say, oh, it's less than what you might expect from GPT-3. 175 billion. GPT-4 is much larger than that, but they didn't release the data. There's another interesting data point here because it's not all about the parameters. Parameters help. That's one of the ways that it does the calculation and gets to the right answer more effectively. But it's the amount of data that it's trained on. And one of the things I noted in there was I think they did 1.5 trillion tokens of data. It's like there's something called the pile, and then there's like the pile plus, or there's extra stuff they put in there. And so even though they have these smaller models, being trained on more data has the potential to make them actually more accurate. And then if they're smaller models, maybe they're faster, all these other benefits. But I thought that was really fascinating to really see people start to push that parameter more.
Yeah, pushing the parameters by not pushing the parameters. Yeah, and as you said, there's a 3 and 7 billion parameter version, and they mentioned that they're working on a 15 and 65 billion parameter version. But what they are more bragging about is, as you said, the tokens, the 1.5 trillion tokens of content. It's built on the pile, but they say it's 3 times larger than that. And they point out that, well, they say it's surprising. I don't know how surprised they really are, but that it's performs at a very high level despite having, a fraction of, GPT-3 had 175 billion parameters. So maybe the issue is not the parameters and the fine tuning so much as it is just the amount of training and the amount of data used for it.
Yeah, I think this is really important. At some point, how many parameters do you want? What are the other things you can do? Sam Altman in his interview with Lex Friedman, really talked about this idea that they OpenAI doesn't make big leaps. It makes a lot of little leaps that collectively have a big difference, which I thought was very interesting. The other thing he did say is that he said that the data that they train on and the amount of data they train on is, essentially they think it's a big differentiator for them. So they used to talk about exactly the data that they trained, GPT-3 on, stuff like that. When we went to GPT-4, they did not. So some people are complaining about that, but in any event, this idea of the data, how much do you have? What is it? Looks like it might be the next thing that's moving us to, better than what we have today. Although what we have today is pretty astounding.
Yeah, and it's just as a quick note, it's worth mentioning that as there's more awareness growing of this, the importance of data and how much data, some of the repositories of lots of language data are starting to get a little more possessive of their data and not wanting to have it be shared around so much for training. So it's going to be more of a scramble in that regard as well.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so we have another Stability AI solution. Stability AI, if you guys don't know, they're the company that created the open source stable diffusion model, which is, really the top thing, what looks like the most used broadly, because you don't have stable diffusion, but like every application that doesn't use DALL-E, and very few that use DALL-E actually are using stable diffusion.
Yeah, you can tell it's popular because it's facing the most litigation.
Yeah, fair enough. So, but when we talk about Stability AI, they have Stable Diffusion XL. And one of the things they talked about is this is for enterprises. And when we talk about StableLM, who's that for? That's also for enterprises. And so we think of these text to image generators have really sort of come out and they've been more consumerish, professional on the side type of hobbyist tools. But they're moving headlong into enterprise.
Yeah, I mean, it's evident from not just how it's more powerful, but in terms of where they chose to focus in terms of creating or improving features. It does make some very photorealistic images, but it's clearly aimed at scaling up. So, for instance, the AI is designed to fill in details that you don't put into a prompt, so that you don't have to spend a lot of time writing a very long prompt or face a unusual or nonsensical background. It can, in my opinion, probably the most important thing is that it can put text into the images and correctly spell and put the words in, so that when it comes to things like marketing or really any branding element at all, that's going to be huge. So if a marketing campaign is in need of a lot of images very quickly, but doesn't want to have to deal with having to manually photoshopped in words onto a picture, this is going to be a very big help.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting because the text image generators are terrible with text. It's interesting. They're good at text inputs, but they're terrible at generating it. It very rarely even looks like letters. And when it does, it's like not legible. But another point here, just so people are sort of up to speed, Stability AI raised $101 million last late summer, early fall, at a $1 billion valuation. So they last month Fortune reported that they were raising at a $4 billion valuation. So we're talking about maybe a 6-month period where they quadrupled in valuation. And part of that is based on the success of Stable Diffusion. There are some reports that as many as 10 million people are using Stable Diffusion right now. And this is multiple scenarios, like through Stability AI, through all these sort of other solutions. Night Cafe uses it. But that's a big number. And this idea that they're moving into large language models as well, I think is also, something that when you look at investors, they're going to be, oh, okay, your total addressable market just went way up.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a balancing act. And although Stable Diffusion seems to be, or Stability AI seems to be handling it pretty well, where they're on the one hand pushing this very enterprise, obviously revenue generating service on the one hand, and then the other hand they have an open source StableLM, and obviously there's revenue opportunities there, but it's about trying to foster a certain image of the company, bring in crowdsource research, but also pursue revenue, to which of course the investors are keen on. So
absolutely. Well, we've been talking a lot about the enterprise today here at Model Mania and now on Gain. And I have another one for you. So Adobe Firefly Video looks pretty interesting. Adobe announced Firefly, I think it was like 1 month ago, a little less than 1 month ago at their user conference. And then the video just came out in advance of the NAB show. What's going on there?
Honestly, it's pretty impressive. And the fact that it came out so soon after makes me wonder if they were just nervous about facing a Google Bard situation of a demo going wrong. But essentially, it's the kind of, it's what people imagine when they say they want an AI assistant. In this case, as a video editor, you can literally just describe how you want a video to look. You can say you want it to look like the golden hour or at sunrise, and it will adjust the lighting. You can ask it to change the lighting just for a certain part of the scene, so it'll make sure to light a human and not over brighten the background. And it can even help on the sort of pre and post production side of things. It will take raw footage and put together a storyboard or suggest B-roll footage to put in and sound to put in. It's really impressive.
That blew me away. So if anyone's done any video editing and they're familiar with that process, B-roll is like the background images. And like one of the examples they showed was this woman who's like, I think she's going to go climbing or something like that.
Yeah, she's demonstrating rock climbing.
And they ask her a question, and she's like, it's like sort of this authentic interaction with this athlete using our gear. And so she starts answering it, and she's getting prepped, and then they show her putting her shoe on, but it's a close up of her foot, so they pan, it's not they pan down, they just do the cut. And then they do the cut for her picking up her gear and all these other things, and then it's back on her. And the way they present it is it's just that we'll see how it actually works. But the other thing was like just based on the footage with the water at the ocean, it said suggest a soundtrack for this. It actually identified what was going on and suggested something would be appropriate.
Yeah, the sound element is pretty amazing, because if it has access to background music, sound effect databases, and understands what's happening on the screen, then it can give you some pretty helpful advice. It's honestly, back in college, I was an intern at a TV channel. This is what an intern does. You go through huge libraries of data and put together suggestions and log everything in the B-roll so that the editors can figure out what should go where, but it does it all for you instantly. So and can do the magic computer thing of enhancing the image in a way that is not usually real.
Yeah. So what we've seen is these really great, I would say it's hobbyist level solutions mostly out there. And then in the LLM space, you think of like Jasper AI, they sort of professionalize that. They're like, oh, if you're in a marketing department, these are the features that you're going to need to be successful. In the text to image space and the text to video space, which is much newer, or the video editing space, we've really seen, hey, here are some magical features. And then you sort of have to figure out how to put it into a production that would be like business ready, as opposed to fun, experiment ready. But it looks like Adobe understands their market really well. And they're just like, oh, okay, you want all these tools, and we're going to put them in a format. We're going to give you features that you're going to be able to use in the enterprise. And they have their own training data set for their image generator. And they're only using images in their training that apparently they have rights to, or at least there's open rights to.
Yeah, we haven't even touched on just the, for news, it's not such a thing, but if you're doing a fiction or a artistic video, and you get a great, what seems like a really great shot, but it's just not quite the right angle or not quite the right approach, generative AI can fix that for you, and it doesn't matter. It's not you're not lying to anyone. You're just getting the computer to enhance an image.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, sometimes I think Adobe's asleep at the wheel, but I think they're implementing a very efficient vision here. And if I think about Adobe too, the one other thing, the LM or the text to X features might be the best thing that's ever happened to that platform, because if you've ever used Adobe tools, these are power user tools. And if you think about like the explosion of Figma's got a larger market share in just terms of total users than Adobe does, even though it's been around longer. Part of that's there's like a free version of it too, but still, if you go in there, it's like it's overwhelming. And then they have so many different tools that do different things. You have to like learn the language over and over, and the feature set over and over again. And a lot of these tools, I don't even know, like there's certain types of features I might use once. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
There's features that I don't know where they are. Like they've got the toolbar on the left, but like, how do I find this thing that's 3 layers down? Just being able to ask for it is amazing.
Well, and it's telling, just briefly going back to Stability AI, the first company they acquired, rather than trying to build their own photo and video editing software, they just bought a popular one because people understand how to use that platform, so they can just piggyback on that.
Absolutely. Okay. So another enterprise solution that just made an announcement this week around generative AI is Atlassian. So if you don't know the term Atlassian, they're actually a giant company, but you might know Jira or Trello or Confluence, which are really popular in the developer community for project management in marketing in particular, but a lot of different solutions. You know, that's really interesting. They call it Atlassian Intelligence. They like branded the features that goes across all of their solutions. It's sort of a separate feature, but it's an embedded feature. You know, I just chalk this up as that every enterprise application needs to have some sort of LLM functionality for search, for summarization, for all these things. They put it in there, but it seems like they are really being thoughtful about it as well in terms of harvesting the data and then be able to provide in-context responses, in-context generations back to their users.
Yeah, from what I've been able to tell, it seems like they've let other companies go first. They've seen where there is a need for this kind of technology, whether it's meeting notes or customer service. I think they're being judicious about not just making a splashy sort of like, here's the box for everything. It's making these features part of what it already offers, so that their customers presumably will feel more comfortable using it.
They know their business and they're helping people. They know their customers, they're helping people. But this is a really good point. They waited to see, and maybe they had to wait because they weren't ready. But you know, if I look at what Microsoft came out with in terms of 365 Copilot and like how they're going to use the Microsoft Graph, which is going to customize it to you and your enterprise and all these other types of things, which I think is the right model. I think it's like, it'd be amazing if they can implement it. But Microsoft is so big and it's so complex and so many users. I'm not sure how well that's going to work. I have a feeling that Atlassian could nail that just because of the way they don't have as much technical debt. They're always updating their solutions, and they don't have to tackle as many problems as like a Microsoft productivity suite does. I have a feeling that they might get there first.
Yeah. And again, seeing where they focus, what they highlight is always interesting. And the fact that they highlight a tool that essentially does coding from natural language, which seems to be mainly about not needing to call the IT department all the time. And the other notable thing is they talk about analysis, about seeing how work is being done, the relationship between them. I think that the data analysis is going to be a big element, especially in the enterprise side of generative AI. And it's still too early to tell how important that will be, but I think there's a sense that that's where there's going to be a lot of very interesting and useful feedback coming back from the embedding these sorts of technologies in these platforms.
All right, enough about this boring enterprise stuff. Let's talk about Elon Musk. Boy, he's in the news every week anyway, but now he's on the AI train. And a lot of people know that he was one of the co-founders of OpenAI when they went from a nonprofit to a capped for-profit. He said, you guys are abandoning the principles. I'm out of here. And more recently, he bought a bunch of GPUs, a bunch of NVIDIA chips in order to train his own AI models. And he's got something new this week too.
Yeah, it's all very Succession or telenovela style people drama going on amongst this technological evolution. But yeah, Elon Musk there's been all these hints that he's working on generative AI projects. He's hired people who used to work at OpenAI and at Google DeepMind. He's bought a lot of the big GPUs that you need to run and to train generative AI, which is not cheap. And keep in mind, this is happening at Twitter at the same time as there's been all these cuts and job losses. So now it seems that he's actually incorporated a company called X.AI, which at the moment just appears to be him and one of his regular financial board slash executive members. But the idea seems to be to use what the data they have at Twitter and this new hardware and the new people that he's brought on to create an alternative to OpenAI, at least, and possibly to others. How long that's going to take is hard to tell, but it's not like there's not valuable data on Twitter. Twitter was
so what's the structure here? Is this separate company that's going to then have the AI stuff, and the stuff he bought for Twitter is separate? Is it going to be incorporated in Twitter? How is this breaking out?
It seems to be that X.AI was incorporated, but everything was sort of being set up through Twitter in terms of the hiring and the equipment acquisition. That's not like official or anything, because those sorts of details haven't come out yet. But as far as can be told, and especially since officially taking over at Twitter, he's been obviously spending more time there than at his other companies, it seems. So it makes sense that it's going that way. But yeah, and certainly the AI researchers are coming through Twitter, but it looks like they're going to be now heading up X.AI. And yeah, who knows? This may be something that is almost ready to go and just requires the last business and technical elements, or it may be that it'll be a bit like the humanoid robot, where there's a big announcement, but it's not necessarily available right away.
Yeah, exactly. Or available for a long time. I mean, where are those Cybertrucks we've been waiting for? So we have a comment from Hillary Hayes in here. Boo! We're talking about, hey, you Musk fans out there, get in the chat. You Musk haters in there, get in the chat. Let us know what you think. All right, so I think there's two things going on here. If he wants to actually tackle AI more generally, more like an OpenAI approach, be an alternative, he has to do it as a separate company, even though he's going to own them both outright. So it'll seem like it's the same, but he's going to have to do that. With that said, I do believe that it's a really interesting situation, because whatever comes out of that, or whatever winds up coming out of the Twitter AI labs, can be used right away for a huge consumer app, whether people like it or not. It's like heavily used. And I think this idea of getting to that everything app concept goes well beyond generative AI. You need payments and media and all these other things in there, which they would have to do. And when I talk about the everything app, if people aren't following this, it's like basically like WeChat in China. If you're not familiar with that model, you should look it up. It's the 10-cent application. You could use it here in the US too, but it's like huge in China. It's like everything. It's like if like WhatsApp and like all the social media and all the e-commerce things were together in one thing. So I think he's going to do that. But one of the things I'm actually really interested in is whether he actually launches the virtual assistant we all wanted. Now, someone else could do that. It's just like, it seems like the big tech companies are just not going to do that, because they took this device-centric approach. And it's either the mobile phone with Siri, or Google Assistant, or it's the in-home devices. But if he starts building out these feature sets and uses an LLM to do a much more capable assistant that can be personalized to us and know more about us and really help us execute tasks on a daily basis, it might be like an amazing platform to do that on. There's only a few that really already have huge distribution that could really get that thing set off quickly.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of obstacles, but enough money can push past quite a lot of them. So I would certainly not be surprised to see something like that come out. How quickly or how workable it would be in its initial release is another question. But as I said, the Twitter has the data, they have the GPUs, they have now certainly some of the expertise they need. It's just a matter of pushing through all the troubles, technical and otherwise, that might slow him down, at least, if not outright stop him.
Kirk just put in the chat, Elon's calling it Truth GPT. And
yeah, I'd heard
hard to tell whether he's being famous or I think he's trolling people.
Yeah, I had heard that he wanted to call it that, but I couldn't tell if that was just
It's too close
making a
to
joke
Truth
about
Social.
ChatGPT.
It's too close to Truth Social to like, putting the two things together. I think
Oh, I hadn't even thought of that.
He's just trolling. I'll guarantee it. But that's, you know what, like, you like him or not, he can be pretty funny. All right. So another thing that came out this week is Justice Department has this long-standing activity. They've been looking into Google and its dominance over the search market. And oh my Lord, generative AI showed up in a Justice Department filing before the FTC.
Yeah, there's been this question of and lawsuit by the Department of Justice against Google over whether it's had a monopoly, certainly in terms of its search and advertising systems. And one of the lead lawyer, in fact, for the Justice Department actually brought up ChatGPT. I can actually quote him. He said that what has been going on for the past 12 years is Google has been maintaining its monopoly. Would we have seen ChatGPT 6 years earlier? Would we see 5 other companies competing for search? Those are questions none of us can answer, which is true. None of us can answer. But the fact that even though it's less than a year old, the lawyer for the Justice Department was citing ChatGPT as an example of important technology that whether or not Google had a monopoly, could have had an impact. A monopoly could have had an impact on in terms of when it came out. Is that's moving fast for technology to be referenced accurately by a government lawyer.
Everyone knows about ChatGPT apparently, or at least everybody who's going to be reading legal briefs is familiar with the technology. So you can just put that in there as just like an aside. Now, by the way, the conclusion is wrong. I think that's very unlikely that their search dominance would have done anything. In fact, I think their search dominance became the opening for something like ChatGPT to have an opportunity to kill it right away and get 100 million users, almost overnight, because they were just doing this incremental approach to search, and they didn't really want to replace that all with Palm or Bard. And then, your margin is my opportunity. That's the old business, rule. And, someone comes in and says, oh yeah, I can do that. And in this case, it really wasn't OpenAI. It was Microsoft said, oh yeah, I can take some of that share away from Google because they're just not going to do the better, faster, cheaper thing.
Yeah, I don't, yeah, I agree with you. I'm not sure that it would have come out 5 or 6 years ago, but it's just a very odd situation where Google had been the moving fast startup and then giant company that seemed to be so far ahead of everyone else. And now for some reason, well, OpenAI, of course, it was and is a relatively young company, but it's weird seeing Microsoft in the role as the young upstart making moves against a monolith, as opposed to what I remember from growing up in the 90s of Microsoft was the monolith, and everything it did was slow and careful.
Well, and interestingly enough, by the time they regulated that, and if people don't know, basically Internet Explorer, Microsoft was using its market dominance in the desktop computing to make Internet Explorer basically the dominant browser that they gave away for free. And although they did charge corporations for use, so it's like slightly different thing, but and ran Netscape out of business and all that stuff like that. But and so what they did is they said, okay, you're a bad actor, and they put some constraints on them. But by the time they put the constraints on, the world had changed. And now like Microsoft Edge browser is like really small. But so I always wonder if like when they finally do something about Google, whether it'll even matter, because the world will be just so different. Like it seems like it's heading that way. Okay, so enough on that, because it was just interesting that like this shows up in Justice Department filings now. You just wrote about meta animated drawings. We talked about meta segment anything a couple of weeks ago, which is like a really cool way to like pull objects out of images. What is animated drawings? This is like a really neat little solution.
Yes, so it's in some ways it's an update to a project that Meta was experimenting with back in 2021. It's part of their what they call the fundamental AI research, the FAIR, and it's really great. It's essentially if you draw any human-like doodle, any sort of sketch that's vaguely in the shape of a human body, it will turn it into an animated character that you can program to run and to jump and dance. It feels very I don't know, old cartoon style of like a drawing coming to life and starting to run around. But yeah, it uses generative AI essentially to process a drawing, and you have to manually pick out where the joints are so it knows where the arms and legs would move. But once you do that, you can put it into any video and essentially have your own Roger Rabbit
Okay,
style
so and like
video.
you just, I wish we were able to do it here. We weren't able to work it out with our setup today, but you basically take your kids' drawings, and you can do like a little dance in the background, and then you can animate their like little cutouts of their drawings, and dancing with you. Like, so fun. I just think this is going to lead to a lot of really interesting creativity.
And it's worthwhile pointing out that because the original version of it came out in 2021, they have also released alongside it the amateur drawings data set, they're calling it, which is 180,000 drawings that have been processed through this AI. So it's a really a jumping off point for all kinds of future art projects.
I love the synthetic media, like this generative AI space. Like, it's really the output is the synthetic media, and there's so many ways that we can help with business, but there's so many ways we can just have fun and just like create things that would have been maybe possible before, but just like super difficult that you can do just like in minutes now. It's just like insane. Okay, so we're running up to the end of our time, but I did want to talk about something. So we're going to push the virtual human stuff, which I wanted to talk about to next week because we've got a bunch of things to talk about in that space. But I wanted to just hit on the music space. So Universal Music has a new lawsuit out. Well, is Napster returned? And Drake in the Weeknd had this deepfake viral song, sort of. What's going on in music?
Yeah, so as we've seen, there was text, there was visuals, there were videos, and music is very much on the agenda for synthetic media for generative AI. But for once a existing company is a giant company is trying to plan ahead and trying to stop it from happening by telling streaming services not to play AI generated songs, by trying to push to protect copyright in terms of copywritten songs, copywritten musical compositions, and to prevent them from being used for generating music. And yeah, Universal Music has been really sounding the alarm on this, and they're very concerned that it's going to be essentially the next Napster, but even more so because it'll be even more remixes than rather than outright stealing of art.
If it's the next Napster, it's no problem because they'll just put them out of business. So so this is just about training data, or is it also about outputs?
It's a little bit about both, because there is the element of training, using this data, this music to train AI, and then there's the question of what's comes out from that, and whether it's just a remix that might be copyright infringement, or whether it's actually pretending to be existing artists. And that was as we discussed, the Drake and the Weeknd song "Heart on My Sleeve." Just a few days, it got 250,000 Spotify streams, 10 million TikTok views, but it was all AI generated. The music, the singing, the rapping as well. It's all from AI, but it was done in their style, presumably with one or another of these models, large language models, and came out at a high enough quality for people to actually enjoy it just as a song, even without the novelty portion. And of course, generated a lot of arguments about whether it was real before it came out that it was definitely not real. And yeah, this is starting to pop up more. We've written about a DJ who used AI to write an Eminem song and create an Eminem voice to perform it. In that case, he did pretend it wasn't anything but a deepfake. But the technology is at this point where anyone theoretically could mimic real musicians. So it's the AI going in and coming out. The music industry juggernauts are very concerned and anxious to make sure that their revenue stream is not impacted too badly by this kind of technology.
Well, if anybody can kill a new innovative technology, it's the music industry. And maybe in some cases they're going to be right in their actions. They will also overreach given the opportunity. All right, so this has been amazing. A couple quick things for everybody. If you're not subscribed to the Synthedia newsletter, go right now. I've got, for the people who are watching live, I've got it in the chat, synthedia.substack.com. We talk about all these things in depth, and we're going to be announcing something very soon. So people who are attending here this week for Model Mania, people who are part of the Synthedia newsletter, who are watching Gain, those types of things, we're going to actually start doing some town halls. And we're going to have this open community, Zoom meetings. We'll have some speakers, but it's like mostly we're going to get together and everyone's going to be able to come up on stage and talk and those types of things. It will be closed to the extent that it's people in our industry. But definitely subscribe to that. You'll be getting an email about it. We've had some people say, hey, we just want to have places where we can talk and those types of things. And we'll figure out the format for it. But the idea is like to have everybody to have access and that type of thing. So we'll try this a couple times coming up. Anything else we should be talking about, Eric?
I mean, as we say every week on Gain, there's a lot to talk about that we can't get to, and there'll be even more next week, I'm sure. But yeah, it's exciting. Be sure to keep reading Synthedia, keep reading voicebot.ai, and let us know if you have any projects of your own coming up that you want to let us know about, and we'd be happy to chat with you about it.
By the way, this guy on stage next to me, not only has he written several thousand articles in his lifetime, and most of those about AI at this point, he's written it, I would say, at least 250, maybe over 300 articles just on generative AI and synthetic media. And if you go to voicebot.ai and you go like in the nav bar, there's this thing called topics. You can click on generative AI, you can click on deepfakes, you can click on media, and you'll just, if you just want a chronological walkthrough of what's been going on in the space, you can just like read the headlines and get a lot out of it. And then we've also got, and I think we're up at maybe 200 articles in Synthedia now as well. So if you go there, like use that search function and look at the things that we've talked about in the past, because some of that it like provides really important context, and we'll give you a sense of what's happening next.
Yeah, you can see some predictions that you made, Brett, that have definitely come true already, and some that look like they're about to.
All right, and then there's some that maybe.
Well, I didn't know so much, but definitely some things that you were
too early to be wrong, right? It's too early to be wrong. All right, thanks everybody. This has been really fun. Thanks for joining us this week for another issue of Gain with Model Mania live and in person. Thanks everybody for attending today. We'll be back in touch with everybody to give you some feedback on what we have, links to assets and those types of things. If you're just watching Gain, just go to YouTube, subscribe to the VoiceBot YouTube channel, and look in the show notes, and we'll provide some links for some of the things that maybe you didn't see because you didn't attend Model Mania and you're just seeing Gain, but you're interested in companies like Human First and NLX and VoiceFlow and Skilled Creative and Guided AI that all presented demos of things that are actually working in enterprise use cases using generative AI. So all really fun. Eric Schwartz, thank you very much. Everybody else, thank you for joining. And thank you, everybody who's like saying so much nice things in the web chat right now. Really appreciate it. And this was fun. I think it was fun to do Gain at the end of Model Mania. Maybe we'll do this again next time. All right. Thanks, Eric. Everyone else. Bye-bye.